Tonight I'm going to do a book tag, and it's the Courtship Tag, originally done by Hi I Love Books, and she's another new booktuber, so I thought it would be cool for my first book tag to be done. Well, it's not my first book tag, but it's my first one after the newbie tag, but I thought it would be nice for kind of my first book tag to be a tag that was invented by another new booktuber. So that's kind of fun. So without further ado, she's done this kind of cool thing where the prompts are the different phases of a relationship as it builds, and so that's why it's a courtship tag. It's like getting to know you, getting to fall in love, etc. So the first thing is initial attraction. That's the first phase, and that's a book that you bought because of the cover. And normally I'd be embarrassed to have done that, and I wouldn't say I bought it only because of the cover. I did pick it up and play with it, but that's this book, The Lux by Anna Godberson, with such a beautiful cover, you know, with the Victorian style dress, and I really loved it. I could tell it was a historical just by looking at it, and I picked it up and read it, and she quickly became one of my favorite writers because she writes just so beautifully. So it ended up being a really good move to pick that book for the cover. Phase 2 is First Impressions, and that's a book that you bought because of the summary. And that would have to be Enchantment by Orson Scott Card. And I'm going to be talking about this one a lot. It is one of my favorite books, and it's one that doesn't get a lot of attention. I'm also doing a review. I don't know if that's going to be posted before or after this book tag. I filmed it, you know, at the same time. But it is basically a retelling of Sleeping Beauty set in the Kievan Rus, which is kind of, think Russia and Ukraine before it was Russia and Ukraine. It's that civilization. So it's a great twist on an old classic and beautifully written and just totally something that'll transport you to another time and place. It certainly transported me. So I recommend that wholeheartedly. Phase 3 is Sweet Talk, which is a book with good writing. And I thought about, you know, taking the easy way out and picking a classic book, you know, Dickens, Tolstoy, any of the Bronte sisters, Dostoevsky, anything like that, but I didn't, and here's why. I feel like anything that's a classic, whether or not it's to your taste, is probably something that's going to be generally regarded as good writing, quote unquote. Of course, or it wouldn't have been that small percentage that makes the cut to be considered a classic even hundreds of years later. You know, Pride and Prejudice is 200 years old, and there's still tons of people who say that's my favorite book. So I wanted to go with something that's newer, that maybe people wouldn't know of or wouldn't expect to have such fantastic writing, and that would be The Blue Bloods by Melissa Dela Cruz. And you think it's a vampire book. Well, it's beautifully written. She has a great turn of phrase. You can tell that this is an educated woman writing this. She's not dumbing it down for the teen reader. She's, you know, it's not a hard read by any means, but it's beautifully written, you know, with cultural references throughout, and just, you know, it's a well-written book, and you get into it very easily, and yet it still has a plot and great characters, and it's just fantastic. I definitely recommend it. The next phase is First Date, and that's a book that's the first in the series, and it made you want to read the rest of the series. And for me, that would have to be Twilight by Stephenie Meyer. And I will show you guys, this is my favorite book on all my shelves, because it's signed. Sorry, that was like my best moment as a book fan. Yes, I'm a Twihard. I love it. It is one of my favorites. It really encouraged me to keep going as a writer, even, you know, and I told Stephenie that when I met her. But anyway, I first picked up the book. I'd heard a little bit of buzz about it. This was pre-movie, pre-Breaking Dawn. And I picked it up at the local bookstore. I was home visiting my parents from college, and I plowed through it in like a day, and immediately went back to the bookstore before it closed and bought New Moon and Eclipse, because I just couldn't wait any longer, and I knew that I wanted the whole series. And then I actually went to that little independent bookstore and said, please, 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 you know, do a midnight party for Breaking Dawn, and they did. So that was a lot of fun. That was all that same summer. I just plowed through them all, and it quickly became one of my favorites because, you know, it was the first paranormal romance I ever read, and it holds a special place in my heart. I know there's a lot of haters, but, you know, I still love it. Don't hate me. Phase 5 is late night phone calls, and that's a book that kept you up all night. And for me, that would have to be The Time Traveler's Wife. And this book, I bought it in college, I read through it, I plowed through it. I didn't want to do anything else for like 2 days except to read this book straight through and cry and cry and cry because it's so sad. But, it's one of those reading experiences I'll always remember, and I still return to it a lot. I love the writing. She inspires me as a writer. She's one of those writers. Her and Anna Godberson and Melissa, I read their books and I think, gosh, I wish I could write like that. The next phase is phase 6, which is always on my mind, and that's a book that you can't stop thinking about. And that for me would be Shadow and Bone by Leah Bardugo. And Shadow and Bone is kind of a mixed bag for me. I really enjoyed it. They're kind of based on the Slavic culture though, but without actually being in Russia. So it's hard to let go of the fact that like kvass is a non-alcoholic drink in real life, but it's a stand-in for vodka. And I kind of wish she just called it vodka. Things like that where it's like, if you're going to borrow the culture, borrow it correctly. But at the same time, the story was so fantastic, and the characters and the setting and the writing were also fantastic, that even the Russophile that I am, I forgave it because it was so wonderful. And I read the second 2 books, the first one, second one, third one, read them all the way through and loved them. So, I do forgive the cultural difficulty, but it's kind of always like, that's the reason it's 4.5 stars for me, is I can't quite say it's perfect just because of that, even though I know she didn't intend it to be Russia. I don't know. That's just me. But I did enjoy it a lot. And it's great if you like paranormal. It's great if you like love triangles. It's great if you want to try a setting that's completely different from anything you've read before. Okay, so the next phase is Getting Physical. And that's a book that you like the feel of. And since Hi, I Love Books used the example of a book that she liked, the feel of the cover, I decided to use a book that was like that as well. And here it is. No, it's not called This Side Up. It's got a big slip cover. Hang on while I undo it. It's actually called Tales of Beetle the Bard by J.K. Rowling. And I'm going to block my face for a moment, because when you open this up, and it's a behemoth, there's the illustrations here that I'm not going to pull out for you. This was a commemorative edition. I believe it was exclusive to Amazon.com. It pulls out with this lovely, 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 hang on one moment, this lovely red velvet slip cover that says J.K. Rowling, and it's like her signature is right on it. And then you pull it out, and you have a little difficulty. And then it looks like this. So, it opens like this, and even, the end papers are lovely, and there's writing in it. It's like a little dedication from J.K. Rowling, and it's in her cursive. And the font is even a little unusual. So it's really a lovely book. It's not available any longer. I think it's available, as paperback and regular hardcover, but this special edition was kind of an exclusive, limited edition piece. So I definitely treasure it a lot, and it's a very special, feel to it, and it feels like a real old book, which is lovely. The next is phase 8, which is Meeting the Parents, and that's a book that you would recommend to your family and friends. And for me, the book I would recommend to my family and friends is Night Watch by Sergei Latrenko. It's urban fantasy. It's a little grittier than what I normally read and enjoy, but I did certainly enjoy it. It's a world in which there's a treaty between the light side and the dark side. So everything's in balance. If the light side does something, the dark side gets to do something else. And so there's the Night Watch, which are the light people who stay up at night, and because that's the time that the darkness is more in charge. And they police the darkness. They make sure vampires don't hunt without a license. Things like that. And werewolves, they're not drinking blood or eating people, without permission. And so the main character is a member of the Night Watch, and it goes through his adventures. And then there's the sequel, Day Watch, which is kind of the opposite. And it goes on and on through. And I think there's 4 books, 5 books, something like that. There's one extra kind of spin-off, but it's not available in the United States. It hasn't been translated, so I haven't read that one. But and actually the newest book, New Watch, I need to buy and read. It just came out in the US. These were out of print in the US, so this cover that I have is only available as a used book, but I think the new covers are actually a lot cooler, so check those out if you're interested. And phase 9 is Thinking About the Future, and that's a book that you know you'll reread time and time again. And for me, that is The Bronze Horseman by Paulina Simmons, and it has a great feel to it. It's Russian historical fiction. You know, the author grew up in St. Petersburg, so she does it very, very well. And it's set during World War II, you know, during the siege and all of that in Leningrad as it was then. And it's a beautiful love story. There is about 20 pages of explicit scenes, so if that's something that bothers you, and it is something that I prefer not to read, so I did, you know, I just read through for kind of the dialogue and just didn't really read the action in those sections because I don't enjoy reading that. But that aside, and it is kind of condensed into a section, it was a great read, and actually the second book is on my April to be read video. So, you know, if you like historical fiction, if you like a love story, if you want to try something a little different. I know I've done a lot of books, you know, between Enchantment and this one, and Night Watch is actually originally Russian, and I wasn't trying to do a theme, but it seems like I accidentally did, and I think I'll vary it a little more next time. But the last phase is actually to share the love, which is who I would like to tag. And I'd love to tag Sasha from A Book Utopia. I love your channel. I think you're fantastic. I'd love to see your take on this. And Tasha from Tasha Polis, I think, would have a good take on the Courtship Tag as well. So thank you all for watching, and happy reading.